Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
And tonight's date is Tuesday, February 28th, last night of February. So we start March tomorrow, 2023. And we're going to discuss, talk a little bit about the combine that's getting ready to come up. Some of the Buckeyes from last year that are going to be participating. Just some of our thoughts with that. And then we're going to start as spring football is quickly coming up on us, as we're going to get into some of our spring football thoughts. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball, and then on the next episode we will talk about the defense. So let's get into it. So combine, obviously, this time of year is not only known for spring practice around here or March Madness around here, but the NFL offseason is beginning to really start to kick into gear. If you kind of look around the league, you've kind of seen some of the teams starting to talk about like which players they're going to be cutting and stuff coming up over the next couple months. But that means combine and then in short order draft and free agencies mixed in there. So combine, we got you got you guys like JSN, you got Zach Harrison, CJ Paris. So we got a lot of big names that have been pretty big staples around here for several years. Going to be kind of showing their stuff. Kind of be interesting to see how some of it goes. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how Jackson Smith does. If he's looking like he's ready without being out as long as he's been out. Zach Harrison, and DeJuan, they both have had a lot of they've been showcased a lot on the social media circuits, it seems like, with some pretty incredible feats that they've been doing. Obviously, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where Don falls, in that can he sneak into the first round. I think there's a possibility of that. And obviously the big one, CJ, where's there's been talks, is he the first quarterback off the board? Is he the third quarterback off the board? It seems like it changes every week, it seems like.
Now it's 4. He might be the fourth quarterback off the board.
So it is the funny season. I mean, obviously, I've said this a million times. I don't know if I've ever said this on our show, but I know I've said it to you, to other people, that if some of these guys that have these draft gurus that work for these TV networks, if they were as good as they as everybody says they were, they'd be working for an NFL team, making more money than they do for, that's not taking anything away from them. I know, the Mel Kiper Jr. fans of the world and the Todd McShay fans.
They don't have any fans.
But like, I think, a big time organization would have hired him, if they were as much of gurus or where this stuff goes as they like to think they are.
Yeah. I mean, so I agree with you. I'm interested with CJ. I know alphabetically he's going to be right behind Anthony Richardson, so that's going to be very interesting just to see how they look, kind of one right after the other in certain workouts, like in the 40-yard dash. I don't know if that's going to look great for CJ, but in throwing drills, I think he's going to overshadow AR-15 that went in front of him. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting because I think that, CJ really can help his draft status. I don't know if he can hurt his draft stock because CJ is what he is, It's like Bryce Young, I think people, they just feel like, I don't know if he's the most complete quarterback. He can create the most, though, and throwing wise, he's better than Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, but he still has that dynamic of being an athlete. But he's also, measured in at 5'10" and a half, 194 pounds. So,
Yeah.
and he does not have a big frame whatsoever. So I
No.
don't know. I mean,
He's had injury issues at Alabama. I mean, he's gotten dinged up a few times,
Kyler
over the
Murray
years.
wasn't big by any stretch of the imagination, but Kyler Murray at least was kind of thick, like he had a foundation to him. Bryce Young's small. CJ's not small. CJ's the best thrower, I think, out of any of them. I mean, he just has the best touch on the ball. I don't know, I don't know if CJ has the arm strength, like he can't throw a ball through a wall, like I'm sure Anthony Richardson can or Will Levis, but doesn't matter if you can throw a ball through a wall if you can't hit a receiver in their hands or, if they can't catch the ball. So I think that's going to be interesting. I'm with you on Dewan, though. I mean, there is a lot of people for years that were like, oh my gosh, this guy is, a mountain. He's 6'8", 380 pounds, whatever it is. And I always kind of thought, I'm like, yeah, but he's not really refined, Like I thought Dewan going into this year, I really thought Dewan was going to have a really hard time probably being like a 4th round draft pick. And now I think he has a legitimate opportunity and chance that he could sneak into the 1st round, which is crazy to think. It's crazy to say. The one that's sticking out to me, I mean, Zach Harrison, I think that's interesting too, because how high can he get himself if he is the athletic freak that we know he is in this? Cam Brown, though, like Cam Brown is athletically, as gifted as anyone else, but he's just been killed by injuries his entire career.
Yeah.
So can he use this to get himself drafted? Because if he looks bad, he's probably undrafted. But
yeah, no, I could see that. The thing with just like coming back to Dewan for a minute, the thing with him is that, he is very, I think he's been raw for a lot of his career, and but over the last several years, what's been his biggest issue? It's always just been, it's just getting the couple fundamental things down, the mental mistakes down. I mean, he makes false starts. Dude rarely holds.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to get around him. I mean, he is not ever, with the exception a little bit last year when Michigan's defensive ends, and they had 2 very good defensive ends, did make some noise in that game, against CJ and Ann Arbor. So not this past year, but the year prior to that. But outside of that, Tawana really has not, like, there's not like any like really glaring moments. Like I'm trying to think that really over the last couple years that really comes to my head that have been like, yeah, he was dominated in that game. I mean, he hasn't really given up a lot of sacks. He's hard as hell to get around, but the guy has very good footwork for as big as he is. And, and I think they've kind of showed at different times when, we've had our questions with the stretch runs and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think him or Paris are necessarily great in those type of blocking schemes. I don't think our running backs always are that great at running in those schemes, but when those guys were told that they have to, go straight up, go knock somebody on their butt, a linebacker, and they're not having to do the stretch stuff, both of them are very good at that. And, Dewan, I thought, especially as the season really started, in the couple of times where they would get bogged down running the ball, I thought he was kind of a bright spot a lot of times this year, when they would let him just go out and, be athletic and go block somebody. And I mean, how many times did he pancake somebody and, come downhill hard on somebody? So I really think that, he has great footwork. Can't teach that stuff. He has, obviously he's got the size. I mean, you can't teach. You don't teach 6'8". I mean, now, is the guy ever going to be a left tackle? No, I don't think so. But could he be a real legitimate right tackle in this league and get drafted in the first round? Yeah, I think he could. I think he is a possible bottom half of the first round, bottom third of the first round type of guy.
Mm.
And that means he's going to be playing for, I could see somebody, a Baltimore, even a Cincinnati, a team that's going to be, drafting later that have made the playoffs. Could use, an offensive lineman. They could be like, yeah, I'm going to go draft him. I can get rid of down the road now, I can get rid of maybe somebody that's making a little bit more money. That could be a cap casualty. And here I got this guy that could possibly be a star for me for the next decade because, and he's got a lot of he's got a lot of things that you just can't teach. And I think, in the NFL, you're going to have a lot less of that. I think, no huddles and stuff like that as you see in college. So, I think a lot of that sometimes that, he's a big dude. And when you are going slow and then going fast, it's kind of hard to, get into position. A lot of his false starts and stuff were just that he wasn't in position fast enough, or just got out of position, or they took too long getting the snap off because they had to look to the sideline. A lot of that stuff goes away in the NFL.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. So yeah, I'm interested in him. Him and Cam Brown really stick out to me.
And and then just quickly on Jackson Smith, it'd just be really interesting. He could fall anywhere where, if he he didn't get the one bad thing about not playing this year is that, you didn't get to kind of be that, I mean, the NFL and a lot of these things are what have you done for me lately type things. And, he didn't get to showcase himself. So this is a very important, time for him, the combine and whatever, draft workouts he does because, he needs to show not only the teams that he's healthy, but that, that he's not got a bunch of rust on him that, makes him look a step slow or whatever, where he could fall down on a draft board because, they just they think that you kind of forgot about what he could do. Yeah, they could go back and look at the film of the Rose Bowl, but that was a while ago, and there were some big games this year that he wasn't a part of. That I'm not saying anything against him or anything like that, but there's some of that stuff is in there when again, like I said, you got to put stuff on tape a lot for to get drafted, and that's what these scouts are looking for. What can this guy do?
Right. And if he can run a mid 4.4, I think he'll be fine. I think
I agree with that.
I think he stays in the first round, possibly high first round. I don't know what it would take for him. Going into this year, I couldn't fathom him not being a first round wide receiver. So it's still hard for me to think that there is a possibility he slips to the second round. If he were, though, I mean, that's going to be a steal for someone to get in the second round. That's for sure. But I think if he can run a mid 4.4, and if he decides to do the 3-cone drill, I know no receivers did it last year. I think that's probably the most impressive one he can do, though. Just no one his short area change of directions insane, and he will just blow everyone away if he does that for them. Yeah. So maybe he saves it for Ohio State's pro day, but that's definitely one that he can really showcase.
And something like that would also, it would could go a long, if he's up to doing it, it could go a long way of either way, whether he does it or not does it. It could add questions to the pile, or it could add, certainty to the pile that'd be like, okay, his hamstring's looking good. And,
of course, he's going to get a physical there too. They're going to look at the hamstring. So hopefully all good things come from that as well.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? you want to touch on combine? I mean, like I said, this is going to be, we'll be talking a lot more NFL over the next several weeks as we start pushing towards the draft and kind of figure out where some of these guys are going to end up going. But, we just kind of wanted to touch on this as, this kind of, with spring practice here and stuff like that, sometimes the combine can kind of sneak up on you, and you like, oh God, I completely forgot today was the combine, or whatever, in March Madness.
Yeah.
But it's it's important for the next batch of Ohio State Buckeyes that are gonna go off to the next level.
Yep. No, I'm good. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. It's been a while though, so we had to touch on the combine and some things because it's been a minute since everyone's seen us.
Yeah. All right. So we know spring practice is right around the corner.
Yep.
A lot of probably out of anywhere on the entire team, I think the most questions are definitely on the offensive side of the football. Obviously, the biggest question is the quarterback position, but you have other questions in there too with offensive tackle. I think is a big one, and maybe not as much anymore offensive line as a whole. I think there's some solidification within the guard positions and possibly the center position, even with Whippler leaving. I think there's there are players there. I think the outside is where a lot of people are going to be really focused. Receivers, you feel good about receivers, and we feel good about running back, but it's just there is also a lot of uncertainty there just because it's such a deep position. And I'm pretty sure that Days already said that Trey's pretty much out for the spring.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not.
So, but we know Williams was hurt at the end of the year. We know Pryor's been hurt. How's he looking coming back? Is he going to do anything in the spring? Is Dallin pretty much right now is pretty much the go-to back until everybody else gets a little healthy. So that'll be interesting there. But obviously, let's start off with I think the one that everybody's going to be focused on is going to be the quarterback battle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm real excited for it. I think you got two really great young players. You never know what they're going to be till they're something, but Devin Brown is a little bit more cocky is not the word I'm looking for, but he's a little bit more vocal about how he feels about himself. I think McCord's a little bit more cerebral, maybe just, quiet assassin, that type of guy. Just goes to work and, puts in the work and does what he has to do. I mean, it's going to be, I think, a really, really great battle. I think it's good for both of them. I think we're going to get a great quarterback, whomever it is. I hope the other one doesn't leave because we really need that depth, and I want that guy on this team. I would imagine just because of the extra year in the program, even though it's a true battle, I think Kyle McCord's you're getting your first snaps, with your ones, but it might be a straight 50-50 split with the ones though. That's the only real fair way to do it, but I'm not sure if that's. I think rep number one though will go to Kyle as long as he's healthy. I don't see why not. But Devin, from what I've heard, Kyle might have like a stronger arm than what Devin does. I know Devin can throw the ball real well. We saw in last year's spring game, Devin is a pretty good athlete, that he can make things happen with his feet. He wants to make things happen with his feet, which kind of goes against, the last quarterback that CJ that, within Ryan Day's system. Kyle's been working out from what I've read with some speed coaches though. So he's trying to improve that part of his game as well. So yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna get a good player either way, but it's gonna be a good showdown. And I think the only fair way is if you do a 50-50 split with the ones.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I will say the one thing, and I don't always like speculating just because, speculation is speculation. and trying to read between the lines. I mean, you really couldn't take much out of Ryan Day's press conference that he had a couple weeks ago, but he did say he would like to have a guy picked by the end of the spring. And, so I think that's kind of like his mindset going into it. So that kind of says to me that Mccord's probably a little bit in front right now, just because, that
if Ryan Day announces a fall starter in spring, then no, this has to go into the summer. I'm sorry. You can't risk Devin Brown leaving the team.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And I mean, obviously we don't know if he will or not. I mean, I think there's a lot of emphasis put on, obviously the transfer quarterbacks and stuff, but our transfer players, but I think a lot of people, it's also dedicated. I think, Brown probably also looks at it that, he is, McCord's, he ends up getting the starter, he could be gone after next year. So,
Right.
I mean, it could,
and I'm not saying Devin Brown would leave. I mean, Devin Brown's been on record saying, I came here to compete, that I'm not just walking away. Like he said that he's in it for the long haul. You got to get yourself on tape eventually too, though.
Yeah. No. I think definitely the big thing is going to be seeing how they are different in a lot of ways. But I think they're kind of I think Mccord trusts his legs a little bit more than Stroud does. So I think there is some aspects that he's not as maybe afraid to run that Stroud was. Obviously, he's not going to be, Devin Brown, which is much more, positioned to do that. So, that's going to put a lot of, kind of work on both, on Hartline and Ryan Day, that, finding the right balance to find offenses for these type of players, because, you kind of think that, stuff like that, the zone reads and stuff like that are much more in play if Brown's in there, but, is everything, in the passing offense in there like it probably will be with McCord. And so, like, yeah, there's some definitely question marks on that. And, there was different times last year, we kind of said that kind of seemed like the type of offense that sometimes they were trying to force down the running back's throats. It would maybe be better if you had a running type of quarterback in there at Justin Fields. So, I mean, I think if they're not, sometimes that if they get too bullheaded and stubborn on some of their play calling, like, and sometimes it seemed like that they did last year and the previous year, that, maybe kind of going back to a field style offense, maybe the smarter way to go. I don't know. It's just kind of, thinking there out loud about that.
Yeah, no, and I can see it either way. So I can't wait for the spring game so I can overreact to one of them having a good stat line and one not having a good stat line. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna get a good player regardless. It's just, it'll be their first year starting, so you got to take that into consideration too.
And I think that, we kind of talked about this with with Heartline's promotion, is that, I think, obviously they're going to have black shirts on them, but I think that there's going to be a lot more stress tests thrown at them this year than CJ Stroud had to see in the spring. That because I think that I think Ryan Day is going to let Knowles kind of go at them a little bit, because that's also putting a stress test on Heartline to see, can he handle pressure and stuff like that. And I think that, that's going to kind of create some of the game situations that, Ryan Day wants to create in this spring. Obviously you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback, you got to kind of throw, sometimes you might see him kind of get the kitchen sink thrown him a little bit this year, just because, the spring, just kind of see how they react before heading into summer to get ready for the season.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
then we kind of also, obviously, I think the big one after this is, got to be the offensive tackles. I mean, the offensive line as a whole, yes. But like I said, I think that when Matt Jones coming back and you still have Donovan Jackson, and there are guys on the team that could take over in the center's role if Matt Jones doesn't take over the center role. So there are players, and I think in the middle. You would think Fryer is a shoe-in on one of the outside positions, but he did get a decent amount of playing time last year. The interesting one's going to be the other one, and none of these guys have gotten pretty much any playing time. Outside mop-up duty, and and we've talked about that in the past too. That sometimes Ryan Day, it seems like, leaves a little bit to desired at times when it comes to mop-up duty, that maybe he needs to start getting some guys in a little earlier, when the Toledos of the world aren't going to come back on you. And,
but you're still in a position that you can run a full playbook.
Yeah. So,
be called an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how the tackles, I think, really kind of shake out, because, I think that's the big one right now. You need to have, we remember when you think back to like the 2014 season, and they ended up growing. You end up winning the national title, but when you think back to, Virginia Tech and even Navy prior to that, they just, that offensive line was so out of whack, and and JT was so out of whack because not only was he inexperienced, but he had an inexperienced offensive line in front of him. So, that kind of always makes you a little nervous when you need important pieces that are going to be inexperienced on the offensive line with inexperience at the quarterback.
I don't know what 2014 looks like if the one returning starter is not Taylor Decker. Also, you got, at least you have a left tackle there so I'm not sure. I think, center, you obviously you need to find someone. I think there's guys that can do it. They brought in a guy that can do it, and Jacob James, even though he's been kind of banged up for 2 years, so I don't know what he has or where he's at. But yeah, I don't see why Fryer's not a starting right tackle. But then left tackle, it's Tegra is what he's kind of big. I don't know if gives you a good option for left tackle, but maybe he goes right and Josh Fryer goes left. Zed Mahowski's there. That guy's been, he's been, that's been on the cusp, and you just hope he takes it to the next level.
I think those are probably the two guys that are probably, would be leading the pack to take the other position. Tagra is kind of the raw talent kind of person that, you're kind of hoping that, because he's got the body, he's got the, a lot of that stuff, and you're just like hoping that, is he that raw deal, the freak that's going to come out and take over, where, Zen's probably a little bit more refined. He has had some playing time, again, and, situations where he hasn't really, where nothing's been needed of him. But, probably he's got the, he might not have as high of a, the ceiling, but he might be in a better position to start. Yeah, you never know, because, sometimes when you're dealing with raw talent, you don't know how some of that stuff goes.
Right, and I know you don't want to think about a true freshman having to start at a tackle spot, but Luke Montgomery, man, he might end up being a starting right tackle, and then who knows? Fryer is a left. Then I don't know. I don't want to say Luke's ahead of anybody or not. I just know that coming in, they're
really high on him. I like what I see from him. It's just, that's always been the one thing. It's like, there's part of me that I think I can make a better argument that it's easier to start as a freshman quarterback than it is to start as a freshman offensive lineman. And that, and that's that's a very hard position too. But I mean, you can really dumb down an offense to help a freshman quarterback even out, especially one that you would assume that would have a lot of raw talent. I mean, you think about back when Braxton Miller played. I mean, he was a true freshman and he just had a lot of raw talent. Not much was really expected out of him for that year because, and there was other things obviously going on with the coaching and stuff like that. But it's just like go out there and just be the dude.
Well, I mean, think about their receivers and their running backs. Like they could absolutely make it a very simplistic offense for a quarterback to be able to navigate through that.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to run wide receiver options and it doesn't have to be that difficult. You could call just a play like, hey, this is where you're running to, not, hey, if this guy is lined up there, you do that. If he's lined up there, you do that. It's just, hey, this is where all your guys are running. So you don't have to make it that complicated, especially with the talent you have in those skill positions.
And then when you think about it, then on the offensive line, there's a lot of things that go into blocking packages,
but there's nothing you can do to change that. You always got to account for what the guy across from you is doing and how you're going to get.
We've always, we've talked about this a lot of times, when we were last year, or the year before that, offensive linemen, it's like it's a hive mind, and you gotta, all five of them have to be on the same page, or it just doesn't work. And so, and that's just the difficulty of having a freshman. Now, Luke Montgomery is going to have the body. Obviously, he's not going to be fully up to where he needs to be when you think about with Mick and stuff like that, because he will probably need another full year in the program before any of that's thought of. But he definitely has the body, he has the skill ability to do it. It's just, the mental stuff that comes with the position that, it's just, there's a lot going on, and that will be the interesting thing. So I think he's third, possibly he's going to get looks at it. So I don't know if he comes out taking, like, if he ends up coming out and taking the position, I hope it's that the dude is just the next Orlando Pace and he came out and took the position, not that the other two, just were not up to the challenge, because, that is a situation, if Luke Montgomery ends up being the starter, that it's either unbelievably awesome or unbelievably scary. And, and there's no like middle ground to that.
And I can't remember, why can't I think of his name? The, shoot. And I'm not looking it up right now. Lineman they got last year, though, he's from Wisconsin. I don't know why I can't think of his name, but he played center too. I mean, it was Wishbone, so it's a little bit different than what Ohio State's going to run at him. But yeah, he played center.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either. But yeah, and like I said, I think there's some mixes and stuff where the interior of the line where I think that they'll be fine there. Knowing that you have your two or your three back, and those are big players on this offensive line, and now one has a crap ton of experience and the other one has a lot of experience now. That I think that they're fine there as long as they can find, whether it's Matt Jones being center or somebody else being center, as long as they can find the perfect third person to pair into that, I think they're fine in the middle. It's going to be on the outside to see if they're ready. With that, receivers, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on receivers. I think we, obviously, Marv Jr. and Abuka are the big two coming back. Fleming's coming back too, correct? Right?
Yeah.
So all your starters are back basically. And
my one thing is I want to know who can be a fourth threat, just man up on a cornerback. And I think Xavier Johnson's your fourth receiver because he's proven himself. But Xavier Johnson's he's a guy that you got to dial up a play for him, get him into space, make something happen, or you kind of use him in a way that, like he releases behind the defense and he's kind of there like he did against Georgia, like he did against Notre Dame. I want someone though that can legitimately line up on the outside, beat a cornerback off the ball that you can use in case someone gets hurt or someone needs a break.
I think this is where we're gonna, like, when you're talking about Luke Montgomery and stuff like this. This is where I actually think the true freshmen, a couple of the true freshmen, right, actually make a splash, which becomes interesting because, you know, when we're talking about possibly, you know, there is going to be some movement out of the program once spring's over.
Yeah.
And I think probably where a lot of that movement's going to end up happening is probably, at least offensively, is going to probably be in the receiver room because, you know, and possibly one of the guys out of the running back room. But, you know, if Ennis or Tate, if they end up becoming, or, you know, Rogers, if they end up becoming that, you know, if one of those four end up becoming, you know, passing Ballard, you know, is Ballard, does he decide he wants to look somewhere else? I mean, that's a possibility. You know, a lot of the guys last year that didn't get any time on the field, you know, if one of these guys come in, you know, there's been a lot of praise right now about Carnell Tate. Let's just throw Carnell Tate out there. If, you know, there's things that they can do with Ibuka. Like, you know, if Carnell Tate, they feel like, is a better outside wide receiver, you know, Emeka can play slot. And like, so they could be like, okay, we can, when Carnell comes out into the field as our fourth guy, you know, we can move him back, Emeka into the middle of the field and, you know, not really, you know, lose anything on that. So that there's going to be some interesting things. And, you know, that was kind of one thing we were missing a lot last year. And, you know, I thought that would be perfect opportunities for Ballard, is just that, and we could really have used the guy maybe with, you know, a burner speed to head down the field. You know, maybe it ends up being one of these freshmen this year. And, you know, that could be a very they have an opportunity, the guys that are there. And are all four of them there? I can't remember.
No, Ennis isn't there.
Ennis is the one that's not there. So the other three, you know, this could be a big opportunity for one of them to really step up and kind of grab it by the horns, you know, per se. And that will be really interesting how that goes. And, you know, there's a lot of fanfare behind this group of wide receivers. And, you know, so you have kind of a group of wide receivers from last year that weren't a bad group on paper, but they didn't really get an opportunity this year. And, you know, with Ballard there, but at times it seems like, you know, obviously Xavier was kind of the guy that got thrown in front of him at different times when you would thought those would have been opportunities for him. So that really makes some of that will be interesting to see how some of that goes. And because I definitely think there's definitely room there, that there could be a lot of there could be movement out of the program. Obviously, a lot of those guys are very talented, and, you know, a lot of teams around the country would love to have any of those guys if, you know, if one of those freshmen really light up the room and possibly steal a position out of spring.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So that's just what I'm interested in seeing, who's going to step up as that next guy off the bench, because I don't think. We know Hartline. Hartline needs to be able to trust that you're a high-level guy to be able to get on the field for him. So I don't know if there's, you know, three guys that can step up. Excuse me, the next three off the bench, but there's definitely one that can, you know, we're missing one guy that can step up as a receiver when we need him. Tight end class, tight end room. I mean, Keenan Bailey, you know, it's his first year, but he's worked with Hartline, you know, extensively over the years. He worked with the line last year. So I think he has a good feel for what a tight end coach, you know, needs to do, needs to teach. I mean, I guess the guy is a hell of a recruiter. He's real serious, real dedicated guy that he's going to work his ass off to understand the position. So I think that's a good thing. You got, you know, Cade back. Of course, you lose Mitch Rossi. That's all that's not coming back. Which Mitch always stepped up. So I'm not.
Hey, Mitch was a.
That's
I
not.
Mean, he was a very
loss.
I mean, Mitch was a big. He was a big deal in the second half of that, you know, Georgia game. He was.
Yeah.
You know, he was. they really needed him, and he really did step up in a lot of ways against Georgia. Kind of played out of his mind in a lot of ways when you think of. I think one of the guys to really be interesting looking at here is kind of G. Scott. Like, there's a lot of talk about it's Thurman, right?
Jelani Thurman, yeah.
There's a lot of talks right now that he's really looking good so far. Obviously he's got a lot of abilities coming in, on paper. You got Royer back, you got Cade back, so
you got what, Bennett Christian, Sam Hart.
Yeah, you got those guys. The lasting impression, you don't know how much on some of the coaches' minds for G is that, is he starting out in the doghouse a little bit? And, so that's interesting. Like,
not only that, I mean, the thing right now is G's a converted wide receiver. He's never going to get to be a tight end size. Could he fill in for Mitch Rossi, though? Could he be a fullback in the offense? I mean, 6'3" is kind of a big fullback, but I mean, these are just names we're using in today's football. I mean, what does it really mean anyways? But, you said earlier about DeJuan Jones, you can't teach 6'8". Well, Jelani Thurman's probably 6'5", 6'6". Like, G. Scott's never going to be 6'6".
Yeah.
It's just so what G wanted to be, that Kyle Pitts type of guy, Ohio State recruited one. And he physically, is he ready to start right away? Maybe, maybe not. Is he ready to block in the Big Ten? Maybe, maybe not. But G's always going to be, a smaller tight end because he's a wide receiver. But there's ways that they've shown that they've made the offense work for all different types of body types, all different types of skill type tight ends before. So I think he'll be fine. I just, like, kind of where you're coming from is I don't know where he's at in the depth chart.
Yeah. And I think that, obviously, even though he tailed off a little bit as the year went on last year, I mean, Cade was, he was a real kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word surprise. It was just that he's bounced around so much that I don't think any of us were really expecting that for him.
Yeah, I would use surprise for that. A pleasant surprise for Cade.
And so, I mean, he's the man coming back. He's the starter. Where's Royer at? Is he ready to take his kind of next step into?
I mean, he looked like he was last spring.
And and then, like you said, you got some of the younger guys too, and then, and I know it's one boo-boo, but it's a bad boo-boo, and you don't want to keep on possibly throwing it at somebody, even but he got put in the doghouse because of the Michigan game. So, and what happens, when you get put into a doghouse, sometimes people pass you up, and so that could be a very interesting thing. So that's kind of interesting. He could be another one that you don't know if he's still with the team at the end of spring, because he might decide that it's time that, to move on. And unnecessarily, if some of these other guys look like they're in front of him, I wouldn't necessarily blame him if that's the decision on it. Yeah, it's about going to the next level, and you got to play to get to that. Especially in a position where, you might be able to a receiver on this team or a running back that does some things but doesn't necessarily get in the spotlight. I think Ohio State carries a lot of reputation with a lot of those positions, so it's like, you might get a shot as a Mitch Royer or whatever to get drafted into the NFL because you're I mean, not necessarily Mitch, but not
Mitch Rossi.
Yeah. And or you think about one of these like receivers, if it's like a Fleming. I think Ohio State has showed enough over the last several years with receivers that, Fleming, he hasn't really done a lot, but he might get a shot to actually get drafted in the NFL somewhere, just because, their reputation kind of precedes them now, where, the tight end position.
I know, not to cut you off, but I know it's predated Heartline, but Noah Brown is still signing NFL checks.
Yeah. So like I said, the
Or still
reputation
catching them, I should say.
the reputation still precedes them in a lot of ways with the type of players. So, but they haven't really had that in a tight end in a long time. So you like, I don't know if a G Scott that only gets to play a couple times a game, and where an NFL team will just be like, well, you know what, Ohio State's never let us down with tight ends before coming into the league, so he's going to be on our board just because we know that he's a talented player. So I think that's something to look at too, that he might have to, if he kind of gets passed up here, he might just be like, hey, it's time to go and see if I can get on somewhere else.
Yeah. It's rough to lose a guy in their fourth year like that if that happens, but 'tis the nature of the business. I mean, thankfully, I know it can be frustrating for everyone, but guys like that should have an option that, hey, I gotta go somewhere to get film on tape to be able to play at the next level. So thankful that that option's there for him. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully he can carve out a spot on this, on the team and a lot of playing time. Running back room, I think this one's going to be really interesting just because you got a ton of injuries and you got a ton of bodies there.
I don't know who's going to be there. Like, you got to figure Hayden's going to be there, and probably Mayan's going to be there. In Chip's back,
Chip. I mean, Chip was a running back before, so now he's probably going to cut some weight that he gained to be a linebacker, and the guy's just going to be more chiseled out of stone. I mean, who if that was even possible.
I think the interesting thing here is going to be Pryor. It's just going to be like, Travion's not going anywhere. Mayans ain't going anywhere. Dallin, he's got a lot of praise from last year. He stepped up in a big way, so he's going to be very high on a lot of the coaches' minds because he performed when he was needed to perform last year as a true freshman, and that's kind of again one of those situations where no fault to Pryor, but sometimes injuries kind of throw you behind the people kind of pass you up. So I kind of will be, even though there's ways to use him because he does leave, especially with catching the ball out of the backfield and his speed, there's just stuff that you can't teach there. But I don't know if he might decide that he's kind of like my guy that I'm just got kind of circled, be like, he just kind of feels like the odd piece right now, that I'm just thinking that that room might just be a little too big right now, and he might be the one. He's the guy that I got personally circled that I could see leaving if push came to shove.
Man, his skill set's impressive, but after a couple injuries, things slow you down. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right in your thinking. Just hopefully you get them all to stay because they all could do something.
Yeah, and as you saw this past year, you really need the depth because, I mean, I would have loved to have. I don't know why they didn't try to run Hayden more and it seemed like in the second half of the Georgia game there was opportunities to run the ball more because it seemed like they were actually doing okay against Georgia running the ball, and he kind of. And then, of course, the Michigan game is still kind of befuddling to me because, it was befuddling to me that they didn't really give Hayden any opportunities. And then it was befuddling to me that Chip was actually running the ball good. And then they kind of
took the ball out of his hands.
And then they went away from him. So, obviously, yeah, depth is needed at the position. We saw that this year more than anything, that, basically your top three guys are all out. And, they needed, they needed the Chips of the world and the Dallin Haydens of the world.
Yeah, trust your guys. I mean, that's yeah, but that was definitely a rough year for running back health this past 22 season.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to hit on, or you think we're good?
No, I think that's a good little breakdown of the offense. So we'll come back next week. We'll talk, defense. We'll talk combine results. Probably before Ohio State even tips off for the Big Ten tournament, but
yeah, but
they're gonna play next Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean that's hopefully they.
I mean, they're going to be the first round because
Yeah.
they're that bad. But
That'll be interesting
hopefully
too.
that Illinois game woke something up. Maybe
Yeah.
a sleeping giant has emerged.
It'll be interesting to see, which we'll probably come talking about how they finish, because I could have a, it seems like there's a lot of there's a loud minority within the fan base about removing Holtman, and so and that minority seems like it grows every week, and you know how those things have all that stuff has a mind of its own, and and I know it's the same thing about NFL general managers and NFL owners. Athletic directors like to pretend like they don't hear people, but they do hear people. And
Right.
and when things get loud and big time boosters start complaining and things happen, yeah, Ohio State's not per se a basketball school, but you're the basically top 3 richest athletic departments in the country. So it's not an excuse to be bad at basketball neither. And so that will be interesting over the next couple of weeks, because I'm not saying get rid of him or not. I think they should give him one more season. That's kind of where I'm falling with that. I think he's done enough over his career. I still think Buckeye fans that are crazy that get into this Thad versus Holtman argument, that somehow like Thad Matta's judged completely on his last 2 seasons, being like, do you remember anything he did prior to that? And so some of that stuff frustrates me when I hear some of the Buckeye fans that are real big time behind Holtman say that. But no, I'm not saying that they should fire him. Like I said, I think they should give him another season. I think he has done enough to earn that. But like I said, these things have a mind of their own, and if they don't finish out the season strong and then they get bounced, and that you're not expecting them to be playing on Wednesday. And
Yeah.
I mean, they've looked really bad coming down to different parts of the stretch.
Hey, they're on a 1-game winning streak.
Yeah. So hopefully they can get a little bit of winning streak here, and maybe make a little bit of a splash in the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament, and
you got to win it.
make people. I mean, I don't know if they're going to win it or not. So but maybe if they could get a couple wins behind them, maybe that would at least makes people in the program feel better. That okay, we can at least give him next year.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from there.
I don't want to turn over a bunch of stuff right now. They got a good class coming in. So, but like I said,
you can't always use that as an excuse to keep someone around either.
I know, because it's still Ohio State. You expect them; they should be able to. They're not going to be bringing in. Where in football they bring in Kentucky talent on the football. So you're not expecting Kentucky and Duke talent out of them in basketball, but you're expecting good basketball players that are going to make them a competitive basketball team, and they should be in the top 5 every year in the Big Ten. I don't think that's a crazy expectation of the program. It's not crazy to expect that Ohio State should make almost every Sweet 16. And then after that you get lucky, and as if you can get to the Elite 8 into the Final 4. But I think that they are a big enough program that that shouldn't be a hard goal for them to be able to accomplish.
No, I agree.
Alrighty, let's get on out of here.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.